Okay. I call this meeting to order. I would like to welcome everyone joining us in person and via live stream. Thank you for being here. All of our board members are present with the exception of Megan Furness, who is excused. The purpose of the work session is to receive operational reports from the administration and discuss matters as a board. We'll begin with kindergarten registration update presented by AJ Watson.
Good afternoon, board members. I just wanted to give you an initial update. We are always interested in the numbers and registration, so I'll give you a more detailed report at the board meeting next week, but I just wanted to update you since we did have our first day of kindergarten registration on Thursday last week. We had 501 kindergarten learners register. Last year, just as a comparison, we had 528, and the year before that, we had 517. So we're in the ballpark between 15 to 25 as to what we've had. I want to thank Courtney. You've probably seen a lot of the advertisement with the campaign, You Belong Here. Did a really good job of helping us get the word out and get everyone that we could to register. They still roll in over the next couple months, so we'll monitor those and I'll keep you updated. And I also wanted to show you some trends, but next week when we have all the numbers, I'll kind of show you some of the trends so you can see a school by school breakdown of what those numbers look like. We didn't have them for today's work session, but we'll have them for the board meeting next week. But we're in the ballpark of where we've been the last couple of years, and we'll continue to monitor. But just wanted to give you a quick update so you knew the numbers and where we were at. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next, Sue Pettit will present the cell phone policy committee update and draft policy procedure and revised policy 8505.
Okay, so our cell phone committee met again last week and finalized the changes in policy 8506. We thought it was important. The first thing we talked about was the why and why we needed to redo this. And so that first paragraph addresses the why for a cell phone policy.
And which page are you on? You're on the the
policy
committee? On the
8506.
Yeah.
Okay, I got that.
Okay.
On the revised, right?
Where it
Correct.
says
The one in green.
dedicated to cultivating.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so we added a why, and then no, you're on the procedures.
Oh, okay. I'll get okay.
You want the one with the screen, with green highlight.
Oh, I
It looks
got
like
it.
this. Maybe.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So we added a why, we added some definitions, and then talked about when and if cell phones would be allowed. And the only time that on our school would be during lunch for high school students. The rest of the time, cell phones are to be left in off position and silent, and preferably off person. So in a bag, in a backpack, in a locker, on a vehicle. And we had a long conversation about that because if it's on buzz and it's in your pocket and it buzzes, you can't help yourself but to look at it. So we're saying, nope, put away. And then just cleaned up a lot of language on it. Okay? There was no procedures for the cell phone policy, so we did write a procedures. And that's the part that says dedicated to cultivating. And we laid it out for expectations. We looked at several policies and procedures from other districts. And one of the things we liked was the expectations for students, parents, staff, administrators. And so we included that in our procedures. We talked about first violations. They get a verbal warning and turn in their cell phone to the main office, pick it up at the end of the day, and parents would be contacted to let them know that that had happened. Second violation, then the parents have to come in and pick it up at the end of the school day. And then third violation or subsequent, the parents would be contacted again, and then they'd have a conversation, have a conference about it ongoing. We also talked about that we need to make sure we put something about IEPs and 504 and health plans, that if cell phones are needed for those specifically, that the teams would work on appropriate times and use for cell phones. If you have any questions, if you want to give us a call sometime this week, if you need clarification, we'll be more than happy to clarify anything, but that's going to be up for first reading next week. And then part of our old cell phone policy had a statement about cameras and audio equipment used If we prohibit cell phones, that's great, but we do have times that we use audio and cameras that are school-issued. So we needed to add a paragraph to our student use of district-owned electronic devices, and that's the added paragraph in policy 8505 in green that it's strictly prohibited unless authorized by a student's teacher. It's on the second page.
Okay, yeah, I was looking.
Yep.
Gotcha.
That paragraph used to be in our cell phone policy, and it didn't quite fit there because it's the school-owned equipment that they can use to record things. And we talked about yearbooks and newspapers and the things that Cami does and takes pictures of the kids. We wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity to do that with school-owned, with permission. And then we talked about that they needed to make sure they got permission from the parents to publish any of those pictures. And so that's part of that also.
Isn't that part of the permissions at the beginning of the year?
It is, yep.
Okay.
But it was part of the cell phone policy, and it didn't quite fit in that cell phone policy, so we needed to add it to this policy, and that's why we were here for the second one. Okay? All right, that's it.
Can I,
Oh, yep.
and maybe this is as much for Courtney, but how are we going to communicate this now to the public, students,
So-
staff?
I know Courtney's-
So, yeah, that's the one thing I noticed is missing is that we had talked about the very first step would be to be an information campaign, including research, public input, like opening up to public opinion. What do you think should happen? Parents, kind of different groups of people, parents, teachers, students.
And those were all included in that cell phone committee.
In the committee, right?
Uh-huh.
There were
There were-
representatives there, but I meant, we had talked about opening it up to public opinion, like we have with other things.
And that's part of why I said, this is first reading, and so it'll come out, and we can ask for public.
But no official, because I know that, was it Twin Falls that did did kind of an information, that he recommended an information campaign with, like some, what do you call them, surveys and things like that. And he recommended doing that so that you could really kind of show the communication with give the parents, not just the people on the cell phone committee, but I mean, all parents, students, like the opportunity
Right.
to give feedback.
Right. And Tanya and Courtney have talked about doing an information campaign about this and the why. And
And so that
It's
should
gotta
come
be-
before the policy, though.
Right. No, I think
No.
it was American Falls, wasn't it,
Right.
that did it?
American Falls. Did I say Twin
You
Falls?
said Twin. but
I meant
not-
American Falls.
That's what I
Yeah, I
remember. is
meant American
They did
Falls.
more of a roadshow of this is what we're doing and why we're doing.
Exactly.
And soliciting feedback, but I don't think it was necessarily before the policy. I mean,
It was before the policy.
I'm not familiar with that. I thought that we were doing the policy and then we were doing a robust information campaign to communicate to parents about what to expect in the coming months when kids come back to school.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
I,
just kind of what I thought we had talked
Yeah.
about, but.
Yeah,
What
I
was
think
that?
we should have a little discussion too about the policy. First of all, I'd like to thank the committee for all this work. And we had, a large group of people there. My job, in these committees is to listen and to learn. And so that we, as a board, we've got a background and we know what was talked about. Of course, the board here has the final decision. I think that one of the things I have some reservations about and would like to talk a little bit about is the fact that cell phones are not available in between classes. I think my primary concern was not to disrupt the learning environment. I think that, technology has changed a lot, and a lot of parents now are getting used to communicating with their children. And I think that we did have a couple of parents there, but I think that with a decision like this, it's going to affect the personal lives of people a lot. I think there might be a lot of concern. I think a lot of parents are used to having an ability to contact their children in between classes. I think definitely we need to have the cell phones turned off and off the person of the student during class time. But I'd like to have a little more of a discussion even on the board about whether or not they should be turned off all day long.
Was this not discussed in the committee?
We're talking about the board. I've never been
No,
present
that's what
with
I'm
any
I'm
of that.
asking, what-
Yeah,
what
this,
was
yeah,
discussed
no,
in the
we had
committee?
how many people did we have in the committee? About 35 or
No,
I
it was
think
a little more like
About 16, 17?
16 or 17?
16.
I'm
Yeah.
looking, Mr. Knopf, at the notes,
list.
and the voting was 14-0.
Right, and of course, I was a non-voting member.
Right, but
Yeah.
we're talking about our discussion here.
Yeah,
And
Yeah.
this
yeah,
is
but I'm just giving you
perfectly-
a number.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah, no,
definitely.
I was there for all of the, no, I was there for all
You
of
were
them, I
there, yep.
believe.
I
yeah.
thought you were for
Yeah.
all of them, but I don't know.
So, yeah, I'm just saying, I think we had a couple of parents, and I'm just saying that I know we've had a lot of comments recently that we're deferring to committees, and that I think when it goes beyond the actual learning environment, when you're saying, that, you can't communicate with your children in between classes or whatever, I think there could be a lot of disapproval from the public, and I think that's something we should talk a little bit about as a board.
Mhm.
So
The
I
con-
guess-
Sorry, the conversation in the committee
Yeah.
was when kids get messages in between class, by the time they get into class, their brain is still on that message. It's not, and so.
Yeah, I mean, the things that I've read, and I know we've talked, I mean, I wasn't for your last book discussion, and I know this is what American Falls and the other school districts are doing, and this was always my understanding, is that it would be off their person. And it sounds like that part of the policy is that they can have access to it at lunch, which is a true free period. I mean, how is someone gonna have it off their person in between classes? There won't be time to get back and forth.
They don't have
Oh,
lockers.
Well, yeah, it could be collected,
They don't have
before class, like they're doing in some places. And that wouldn't be very expensive. You could have them like Tupperware or whatever. We get like a $5,000 grant or whatever, or you could have like a little pigeonhole
But have you
box or
heard
something.
what kids do, given their brilliance? They get fake phones and pretend to put things. I mean, it's not as simple as saying, okay, put them here, and because they figure out
That's
ways.
what they do on the way to the office, too.
Which is why, the intent is that if it's not on their person at all. And I understand the concern about not having access as a child. And I'll speak for myself as a parent and even as a student myself. Parent, they call the office.
Mhm.
And I think that was also built into the policy. I guess I'm a little confused because I thought all of this was discussed in this committee and that you were part of this committee and that you would have been part of the policy.
Well, as I said before, my primary participation, I think, in these committees as a non-voting member is to listen and to learn and to hear what everybody has to say. And I'm a non-voting member there. Of course,
Sure.
we have the ultimate vote
So
right
now we
here.
discuss
And
here.
so,
Okay.
yeah, I
That makes
want to hear what everybody has to say. And then as a board, then we can discuss the results and decide. But like I say, I really appreciate the work of all these committees and the people. Like, if we have 17 people, I think maybe we had a couple parents. I'm just saying that,
So was that, I guess that's my question then. So as being part of the committee, what did you learn? I mean, if it was a vote of 14-0, what, were there the same objections brought up at the committee then?
well, this subject did come up. And
Megan has some pretty strong feelings on this also, so you may want to wait.
Yeah, she
and
can,
visit
no,
with her about it.
she can listen to this. She can add to this discussion. This isn't any vote.
No, this is just information
So
for
she can
First
add to
reading.
this discussion,
Right.
written, next meeting. I mean, we've got lots of opportunities.
And as
But
far as for
I wasn't at any of the meetings.
Right.
And so this is the first I've ever seen of anything as far as like the policy
Yes.
and things like that. So it's our first chance to kind of see and say, okay, what do we like?
Exactly.
What do we want to change? Maybe do
What
we
more
want
information
any
do you
other
want?
options?
Well, yeah, I
yeah,
guess
we
what I would just say is that I would not like to have the perception out there that we took some kind of draconian measure and that large segments of the public who, feel that we're infringing on their personal communication with their students. And I think maybe, and this is why we're meeting as a board and discussing this, we have the ultimate decision, that maybe it might be wiser to be concerned about the learning environment first, that the phones are not there, they don't have them on the person, they're turned off, they're not going to be a distraction, and that, see how that works. I also wonder too about the difficulty of enforcing this policy between classes. I think that's going to be difficult, I think, for a lot of teachers. It's going to be,
It's
gonna-
difficult between classes.
yes, between classes.
Right.
Well, I think
How
everything you said about the learning environment
But
was,
that's why this policy, the way I'm reading it, is that they wouldn't have to enforce it between classes because
It
it's
is.
not.
No,
on-
no.
Between classes.
no, this would be,
Not
this would be
on their
beginning of the
person.
day till the end of the day,
They don't have lockers.
as the policy is written.
Right, but if
So-
it's not on their person, then what is there to police?
Well, they
Where
said
do
it
they
could be
put
having
them?
in a
They don't have
backpack.
In their
lockers.
backpack.
Yeah, they get in a
their bags.
backpack or a locker
Right,
or a
right.
purse
So
or
they
or
do have
whatever.
them with
That
them.
But
gives
it's
them
off the-
access to it, though.
Yeah, during class, it would be turned off, not on their person. It would not be a distraction to them. Again, I have a flip phone. I didn't have it with me. I left it out in the car because I don't want it to go off or whatever. But I think a lot of people really, they've got used to the technology. I understand that this is a real issue for young people. And we went through the whole book, The Anxious Generation. I respect that author very much. I think he makes a lot of very, very good points. But I think maybe we can get to the point where, as a school board, the public might feel that we're infringing upon their personal liberties and their communications with their children if we try to extend this beyond disrupting the classroom learning environment and say, you can't, we're going to, these phones, your children can't have them all day long. Now, the exception is in there for high school. They can have them during lunchtime, and I think that's good. I'm just wondering if maybe we could have some real backlash, and a lot of people might feel that, we had a committee of 17 or whatever, but that a large portion of the public, and it might even be a minority, but it could be a sizable minority, they feel that we're infringing upon their personal rights to communicate with their student when it's not affecting the learning environment. So that's just an issue I want to bring up. That's why we're here as a board, to discuss these things and to consider the ramifications of what we do.
I see some reservations from Miss Lacy and Mayor Blatt, like just throughout this discussion. And sometimes in a committee, people might say some things, but then maybe it's not listened to or fully developed. But I see reservations throughout, like what about this or what about this, or just some different things. And so I see that there were a variety of opinions as far as some details, but anyway, so I guess that's what we are able to discuss now, is some of the concerns, like maybe one of the concerns was, if there's a debate competition, if they can't find their partner, can they text them and find out where they are? That just seems like, yeah.
And we
They
talked
should
about that,
be able
yes.
to.
Yep.
Things like that. Well, obviously, they would have their cell phone with them. And they have to have their cell phone with them anyway because they don't have lockers.
I seem to
Well,
recall.
I agree with what Heather was saying, that, of course, I'm old school, but I remember lots of times that my wife would call the school district and say, hey, I need to get a hold of someone, or my daughter or my son would call her from the office. But if it's a real emergency, that's certainly a way that they can get hold of their kids. And if it's not a real emergency, they just need to get some information to them. They got text on their phone. They can text, and that phone can be off for all day long. As soon as they turn it on, they got their text. I don't see I don't see it becoming, I really like the policy the way it was written. I appreciate the committee that
So
put it
you like
together.
it, so you specifically, you like in middle school that they don't have it at lunchtime between classes, anytime during the day?
I think so.
And then at high school, you like the fact that they don't have it between classes, can't respond to texts or anything between classes.
Yep,
They
I'm
can at lunch.
They can at lunch. And hopefully they'll be more responsible with it. I think, after reading that book that we've been reading and the things that were brought out in that, I think it's a must. I think we need to those kids need to have that out of their hands for at least a part of their day. And I never knew how to put anything together, say this is this is this and whatever these, statistics, but I've always felt like that they were a real distraction. And, as I work with young men, and I see them, sometimes they can't even sit through an activity without pulling out their phones and find out what's going on. So
I
I've
can't-
seen it to be. a
Yeah,
lot.
I see that
I
too.
can't remember where we were,
Yeah.
but the superintendent for American Falls, Randy Jensen, gosh, I could remember, I don't know if it was at a conference, and, because they did this last year, the exact policy, if I recall. And I remember asking him, what about the enforcement? How, and he says it has taken one or two, in the beginning, there was all kinds of, a little bit of chaos because there was a lot of infractions. And he says after 2 or 3 weeks to a month, he says there's been none. He says people have just, but it's also because there was this campaign ahead of time, inviting parents to come in, voice their, listen to the policy.
Yep, that's
But I
what
think the
I'm talking
policy was basically, this is what we're doing, and it was an education. It wasn't about soliciting, how do we craft this policy? It was the policy was created, and this is what we're doing. Because I remember him talking about those magnetic
The odor bags.
cases, but they were very expensive. And then, now you're tracking and monitoring those things. And I seem to recall there was a question, maybe it was even you, Diana, that said, here we're confiscating, an expensive device, but it's taken directly to the office. The kids can pick it up, the parents can pick it up. It's not that the school is any more liable for the device. I don't know.
They
I
are
guess
liable for it when they have it.
I'm not at all, this was exactly the policy I expected out of all of this after all the
So,
discussions that we have
perfect.
been had.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember reading.
So
Well,
one
don't cut me
example,
off, please.
so one
I'm
example-
Finishing my thought. So, we all get a chance to talk here and have an expression of what we think. So don't cut me off, please. Thank you.
so in Bear Lake, I know it's during instructional time. So that's one thing that's different from this policy, which I do like. I think that that's kind of the kind of where the book was going, is the distractions during instructional time. And that was really my biggest concern, is that I know that there were kids just scrolling, okay, when you're done with your work, you can get on your phone. A lot. And I mean, that's just kind of the different teachers it was kind of a matter of opinion or whatever. And I do think that no one's really supervising that, what they're doing. And there's just no supervising. And so, and anyway, that was kind of the basic concern that I expressed, is during instructional time. To me, I think that between classes, it's sort of like, I guess, they're being prepared for the real world in a job. When you have a break, that's a time you respond to texts, respond to messages during your break, not when you're supposed to be focusing on your work. And so to me, that makes sense, between classes, respond, wait till between classes, then respond, follow up, whatever. That's kind of what I was kind of expecting, is instructional time. It doesn't really matter, I guess, so much what we were expecting, it's what we want. And so,
So in the in-between class time, if I recall from the book, is that was when engaging with each other and engaging in relationships, and not the bullying or the being isolated. That, to me, is what we are helping to foster, is a better school society by not having those distractions. There's no text that anyone gets that is so imminent that they either can't wait till lunchtime in a high school or the end of the day. I think, as a parent, I would be so glad to not have to be the heavy. And yeah, it's gonna, there's no question, I think it's gonna get some blowback. And I appreciate that we're sensitive to that. But I think if we want to create and foster an environment in our schools of learning, eliminating these kinds of distractions should be a priority.
Well, I think that's a good point. I think maybe, though, what we could do now is again, I don't know, I suppose we're looking at a timeline here, and we want to have this implemented by next year. It would be nice to have some more inclusive public input I think, as you said before, they did. They had a program beforehand.
So do you want to explain what you kind of had in mind?
So, yeah, so traditionally with the first reading, we don't necessarily communicate all of our policies out, but in this case, we could put this out through Infinite Campus, that we're on the first reading of the cell phone policy that we think most of our families would want to know about, and invite feedback that way. We did, when we originated this process, send out an Infinite Campus message to all families, middle school and high school, inviting them to submit their interest in participating. So I feel like we've
On the
already
committee.
communicated that this
Right.
is an ongoing process, that this is a policy that is being looked at. And then I think just it's a natural next step to communicate, here's what the community came up with, we're on the first reading, invite that public feedback then, and then base the timeline from there on out. And if it's something that you feel like, based on that feedback, you wanted to have a public forum and invite people in to come and talk, we could certainly do that. But then the real information campaign comes once that policy is adopted, and we let families know what to expect come August, when we welcome students back.
I would really encourage you to reach out to Randy, because like I said, I remember him talking about, they did a parent night, they did even a student night, and particularly did a staff, where they brought the staff in because they needed the buy-in from the staff, obviously. That, again, I might be
think-
not remembering it specifically, timeline and so forth, but
I
I think
think
like
they-
they did it all
I
summer
think it was
long.
after they adopted the
Right,
policy.
I
And
agree
then
with that, I
did-
think it was after
and
the
then
policy.
did-
Right.
And that was kind of our plan, was to have a policy and then do some heavy educating.
Right,
Right.
so
we
that
have
it's
some
not
funds
a
that Tanya
stark,
has secured that we can use toward this purpose.
right.
We just wanted to get past this point, but we certainly want feedback as we're going through the reading process on this
Sure,
policy.
Yeah, I would say that would be a really, really important part of the feedback is before the policy's implemented, before it's decided upon. Because for one, I would like to know. I would like to know how, because of how different things are than they were 5 years ago, 3 years ago. Things are way different, and certainly 10 years ago. When back when I was in school, we just went to the office. Of course, we had to say, why do you want to call, and everything, but they don't usually, that's not really so much a thing anymore. They don't really let kids use the phone, because they do have the ability to communicate. So I guess
They
then
let the kids use
that
the
would
phone
have
all the
to,
time.
that would have to
If the kids come and ask, they use the
make
phone all
sure
the
that
time.
it's available, like that there's a phone available
Yep.
at all the time for them to be able to use or whatever. But anyway, yeah, I do appreciate what Ray said. I also like the Bear Lake where it's focused on instructional time, and I do think we can always change it too. We can add to it later. We can do kind of. I think that. If I remember right, too, I don't remember which school it was, but they did a kind of a test
Pokey.
on, not in our district, another district. They did kind of I don't remember. I don't want to say which one because it doesn't really matter. But they kind of did a trial run with one or two of the schools, or maybe might have been all the middle schools. I can't remember how they did that. But it was kind of a trial run. But also, we can do a policy where it's, okay, we're limiting use in instructional time. It doesn't mean it's set in stone. We can say, okay, do we want to increase?
Is this not the
This-
policy today?
We
So
have
this
it,
is just first blush?
No,
It's
no,
not
but I
even
mean,
considered
the
first
current
reading.
policy
Oh.
today is no use of phone in instructional time. Am I correct?
correct.
So,
Um,
so we're already.
All this, well, we were emailed all the school's policies. And they vary, and they do definitely allow them in instructional time. I mean, I know that for sure.
So the district has a cell phone policy, and it's not allowed during instructional time without teacher permission.
Teacher permission, right,
So
exactly.
the implementation of the schools varies a little bit. But
Yeah.
The policy is the
Right.
same across the board.
Right, and it's kind of, I don't remember the exact words, but I do remember it was kind of, the administrators, individual administrators were allowed latitude to be able to tailor it to the needs of theirs. I know, just because Highland Parent Committee meeting brought that up last year, beginning of the year, and so they implemented a policy, but even when they implemented their policy, they allowed the teachers to tailor it in their individual classrooms. They just wanted them to come up with a policy, sort of like the governor's thing, you have to come up with a policy. He's not saying which policy it is to get the money. And that's what, as far as I know, I wasn't at the meeting, I just heard that that's what had happened at that meeting, is that they wanted all the teachers to come up with a policy in writing or however, I don't know how they did it. But anyway, that's what they did. And so it varied from class to class, and kids learned, oh, in this class, this is what's expected. They have to, some of them have the pockets, or they just have to put them in when they first come in, and some of them require them to be there the whole time, and some it's if they are seen, then they have to go put it in the.
Which is, like I said, why we went to this more uniform policy for everybody.
Yeah.
I think that's not fair to the teachers to put that on the teachers, and never, because this teacher doesn't have a strict policy and this one has a really strict policy, and, I don't think that's fair. I think we
No,
are responsible for that policy, and
I recall too from Ms. McCory, she presented on behalf of a survey that she took, and we can
that's
ask
where
her
I saw
to
it.
bring that back as far as the
Yeah.
staff and share
Yeah,
those results
that
with
was-
you, or we can forward that to you from
Oh, yeah.
another board meeting that we've had. But maybe for now, because Ms. Furness is not here today, that you could have further discussion next week. In the meanwhile, Courtney could get information out to all the parents that this will be a first reading and being discussed by the board, and love your input over the next 2 months. And if it needed a third reading, so be it. I do think we need something in place by June. And hence, we were starting April, May, be ready to go the 1st of June. If it got pushed back a little bit into June, I think we would still be all right in trying to communicate the message. But certainly a uniform, clear message to our families would be very helpful. It'll be helpful to our staff. It'll be beneficial to our administrators.
Yeah, I agree.
I like
I think also too that the uniformity I really wanted to see was, for example, they're saying it's not on their person, it's turned off during class time, and I don't think that was uniform. And I think that is very important and a fundamental piece there that I'm in complete agreement with, and we have to have this uniform throughout the whole district. But I really do think it would be good to get more public input, because, the committee met, this is what they came up with. Let's see what the public has to say, so that they, we're getting to a point where we're not just affecting the learning environment, we're also affecting the way they feel they're able to communicate with their own family. And I guess the other issue I might have too, and a lot of discussion came up with this on the committee, was about, confiscating phones. So that term was not going to be used, that the phones would be turned in. But of course, at least a lot of these phones are pretty expensive, et cetera. And I think, the public might really have some concerns about that part of the policy.
Actually, we call it the bag and tag, and that's been in place for probably
So,
10 years.
yeah, so
Yeah.
Tanya, we actually purchased individual phone lockers for each school, and it holds, I want to say we bought 50s? I think they hold 50 phones. I wouldn't bet 100% on that. But they have individual keys, each locker. So when a child's sent, because their phone is not off, it's disrupting, they're sent to the office with it. They put their own phone in their own locker, they lock it, they take the key. And they come back at the end of the day and get the phone out.
Okay.
Great.
Well, I think it would be good if again, the public was informed about all of that, and
Yeah, I actually didn't know that
Yeah.
they had them right
Yep.
now.
We just got them in a week ago.
Oh,
So,
no
yeah.
wonder. Okay,
Yeah.
because I had never,
Yeah.
usually I would
Yep.
hear something like that. But yeah, I did. I was reading through the committee notes, and that I do remember one of them saying that teachers don't want to touch them. Teachers don't want to touch them.
They actually send the kids to the office with their phone.
Okay.
Let's say.
And then, I guess one other, thing that I would add with the in-between classes is we have a lot of vandalism in the bathrooms. We also have bullying, you hear it's always been that way. It's always gonna be around. And also just that relationship building with the teachers and the kids, in between classes. I feel like in between classes, as a teacher, I would want to be able to focus on, relationships building, and also maybe checking on the bathrooms. I would check on the bathroom that was closest to me if it seemed like there were some issues. Because if we have a policy, I think that we need to be willing and able to enforce it. And in between classes, willing and able, I don't really see how that could be enforced, because we got the bullying, we got the destruction of bathrooms. There's a lot going on in between a class period. And to then start policing, oh, you're responding to a text. Now I need to stop what I'm doing. I need to get your phone. How would that work? How do you see that happening if somebody's walking, they cross paths in the hallway with a teacher, they see somebody responding to a text?
So right now,
How does that work?
99% of the time that whoever sees them says, hey, put your phone away. It's not out right now.
In between classes?
In between classes, during class time.
And that,
it's
well,
put your
in
phone
between,
away.
no, I'm not talking about during class time. I'm just talking about in between classes.
99% of the time, in between classes, it's, hey, put your phone away.
Well, does this, because in
And-
policy, it would be the first offense is it's taken, and the second.
They're sent to the office with it.
Right, and so is that able to be,
For the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I would say you're gonna be doing that a lot. And then after that, I'm gonna fight this for a little while. It will slow down and. you'll
I'm just
have
curious,
people.
like that specific thing, I would love that specific thing on that survey. I don't remember if that was part of Mary Ann's
I don't know.
survey or not, but I would love to know, like, how the teachers feel about, do you want to be an enforcer? And it has to be, whatever policy we have, to me, it just feels like we shouldn't make a rule if we're not absolutely committed to following through with it.
I
And
think that's
and
what the
able
intent
to.
of this is, that it is, and even as Superintendent Jensen said, there was a lot of pushback. It was very chaotic in the first couple of weeks, but once the expectation was set, and that once the understanding is that this was not a wishy-washy policy and that it was gonna be upheld, and the teachers were all behind it, it dropped off considerably. I mean, I don't know if he'd be willing to come and share his opinions of how it's been going, but, yeah, I mean, I was very surprised to hear his response, and he said he was as well. I mean, and in fact, they're doing it in Marsh Valley, same kind of thing. We are the last holdout on a serious enforced cell phone policy. Other districts in the surrounding areas have all done it already.
I definitely agree, we need a policy.
Yeah.
I guess,
But we have a policy.
yeah, no, a uniform policy though, because
We
it's
don't
not
have a
uniform now.
policy, yeah.
And,
I
yeah,
think we have the uniform policy, it just is ununiformly enforced.
okay.
That makes
Well, I think I like the idea of informing the public and rather than just say, well, a committee met, we had 17 people, and then the board just adopted it. And I think this is an issue where I think they'd like to have some input, and in an effort to have transparency, it'll be a good idea to do that.
I think the complaint with the public is that you implement policy before you ask. Like, that was the complaint, like, when you look back, and even the op-ed that you shared with us this week, it's the complaint, having to do with trust, is you made the decision before you had a lot, appropriate input. Now, and I personally think that, that issue was different. I don't want to make a mistake with this, because it is a lot, it's huge. It's huge, and I am the only one with a child in school right now, but we communicate about doctor appointments and ear infections, and, we do. And, very and important things. And so it would be a change for me. It would be a change for everybody. But I guess in a job situation, I guess I'm just going to go back to that. What my thoughts were with the job situation is I think it's perfectly fine in a break to respond to a text. Respond to a text and, hey, me, and then also usually the kids make plans for lunch before lunch. And then, okay, meet me over here or whatever. And I just think in a break, it's okay. That's kind of what I was expecting. So,
And
that's
I think we're back to maybe if we just get this communication out, and then the board could have further discussion. But right now, I'm starting to hear kind of the same things.
Over and over.
Yeah, that are the same points being made. And I think you do need to go ahead and move forward with this communication plan for now, and let that process begin to develop, and then have your fifth member here and really have some discussion when it comes down to, do we even accept this on a first reading? Do we want to have a survey? Can we just trust the public input that we're receiving? And then you can make your points, but I think right now we're spinning just a little bit.
So I do like the ideas that we have to add Mary Ann McGrory's input to this, to the policy reading next week, what she already did, and maybe, and then our next discussion, we could add any more points that we have. I guess the only other concern I had was parents picking them up. So that's another concern that I had. So other than that, I like the, instructional time. So are there any other concerns with this, or any other things that anybody else would like to add with the policy?
I like what Superintendent Howe said. I think that's a good way to move forward.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right. So next, Amy Bowie will present artificial intelligence and draft policy 8507, academic integrity. I didn't see a link for this academic integrity on the draft. Oh,
Did
but
we
I
skip
do
one?
see it here now. Okay.
Did we skip this?
Did we
That's the
skip
AI.
something?
No, she already went over that.
Yeah,
That one was just the one paragraph, so it wasn't much discussion on that one.
Okay, I see it here now.
You see it? Okay, good afternoon. In accordance with Dr. Howe's directive, we convened an AI, artificial intelligence, focus group earlier this year to assess the role of AI in our classrooms. The group consisted of building administrators, district administrators, 2 instructional technology consultants, who were really, really important. They're here today. And the technology coordinator and classroom teachers. Our goal was to provide comprehensive guidance to administrators, teachers, students, and parents regarding the current educational landscape and the potential impacts of AI. The focus group began by clearly defining our objectives and examining both the challenges and opportunities presented by AI. A significant portion of our discussion centered around the issues of plagiarism and cheating in the context of AI and ethical use of AI. We also reviewed various position statements, recommendations, and considerations from state and national resources. So we wanted to make sure we were aware what other districts were doing across the country and in our state. And one of the things we learned really quickly was that districts who implemented policy too quickly were having to rewrite it over and over and over, and sometimes changing, completely shifting what they had originally said. And we wanted to learn more, and we have been. You need to know we've been productively learning for 2.5 years now. We've been working with our consultants and our teachers and PD, and we've been experimenting, and we've been trying things, and we've been evaluating things. And I want you to know that the work has been ongoing. And so today, here we are. There are 2 things we decided on in our focus group: that we would develop guidance language, and many districts did this. So it's not policy, but it's guidance language to create clear and informative guidelines for all of our stakeholders, including parents, students, teachers, and administrators. And then the second thing you'll see that we wanted to do was currently our academic integrity policy doesn't exist. cheating and plagiarism is combined into our discipline policy. And we just really felt like it was time to write a very explicit academic integrity policy so that we could include references to AI. So those are two things we wanted to do. Guidance language on, and how we decided where we decided to house the guidance language is on our district website. And so you have a link to that guidance language. I'll go over that first, and then I'll go over the draft of the policy. Okay, so let's start with artificial intelligence educational guidance. You can see, and it feels good to be here, to have arrived at something to present to you, because it's been months and months and months of work and discussion, and sometimes the discussion and the learning is almost more important than the document that we walk away with. But this is what we landed on. You can see it's divided into what is AI and how does it work. We really focused on that understanding AI is crucial for learners as it prepares them for future careers, enhances learning, fosters critical thinking, and promotes digital literacy. That was important. The second is how is AI used in education, and we did that for both teachers and learners. You can see that, how it's used. How are learners taught to use AI ethically and responsibly in the classroom? And we broke it down into general principles, and you can glance through those. You can see one of the things I think is really, maybe it's all important, and I hope you've read it, but I think the teacher's role, it really comes down to that teacher's role and assignment-specific guidelines that with every assignment, and you can see this, we've had meetings with higher education as well, and it doesn't matter if you're teaching 6th grade or at the university level, students need to know what the expectation is of AI use on every assignment and every task, which is pretty cool, because what it really causes teachers to do is think about what's the purpose of every assignment, what's the learning I want to occur here, and then they communicate that learning to the student and explain to them how AI fits in. And then it talks about learner responsibilities. I think bullet 4 will, what generative AI tools can my learner access? I think that bullet will be pretty important to you, because it tells you where we've decided to start. And it took a lot of thought, but we're going to start with Magic School AI, and that's available K-12. School AI is available K-12. And you can read through those and see that they're safe and they meet all of the COPA compliance that we need them to meet. Canva is available for K-12. Large language models, LLMs, that's different, right? So I want to draw your attention to this. Large language models are advanced AI systems designed to understand and generate human-like text based on vast amounts of data. The examples are ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, Claude. It's what all of our students, it's what everybody's using, right? So for K-8, LLMs are restricted on district devices for elementary and middle school learners due to age restrictions in terms of services for these AI tools. There are 13-year-old age restrictions. So our students that are K-8 will not be able to access LLMs. They'll only be able to access Magic School, School AI, and Canva. And then 9 through 12, to ensure equitable access, the district's lifted restrictions on LLMs for high school learners using district-issued devices. This allows all high school learners to access these tools, whether on personal or district devices. And student accounts for LLMs are not provided by the district. They enter in their own account. Safety and privacy, that becomes really important, and we want to communicate with our stakeholders about that. So you can see that for all district adopted resources, our district secures data privacy agreements with vendors that comply with COPA, FERPA, and Idaho Code 33133, which is just the unauthorized use of student data. And so Kevin Chatfield and Janelle and Heidi worked really hard to make sure anything that we did approve and that we do approve meets all of those specifications. And then you can see the access for students 13 and under, that you can read through that, and that's what I explained already. And then the last bullet is where can I learn more? And we have parents guide to AI So this is our guidance language and all of our information to all of our stakeholders, and it will be available on our website. Then,
Where are you reading?
oh,
There's a link.
Oh, okay.
did you see the link for the
No,
artificial intelligence educational
Nope,
guidelines?
I don't.
You still don't see it?
No, I don't.
It's right in the middle of that first paragraph, that first sentence.
Hypertext link. Go up.
Oh, okay. Oh, I do.
So
Thank
that's
you.
the website. I apologize
No,
that
that's
I
okay.
should have
That's
slowed
my
down.
bad. I did not see that
Okay.
in the first, I was in the second.
So that's the website, and that's how we'll communicate our guidance of how we're using AI to everyone.
So I had a question about equitability.
Yeah,
Equity?
equity, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, so are teachers going to be instructing kids how to use it? Or is this kind of a, whoever decides to get, go down the rat hole and figure it out?
No,
I
that's a
mean,
really good question. I think up until now, it's sort of been, we've provided trainings. We've gone into.
For students, or you're saying?
For our staff.
Staff, right.
Especially we started with high school, right? Because they're the ones that we knew students were using the LLMs anyway,
Right.
whether they had them on their devices or not. So we started trainings at the high school level, and I provided some, our coaches provided some, and just making sure they understand AI themselves to start. So that's been happening, like I said, for 2 years, and we've been learning and gathering information as we go. Now that we have very clear guide, we wanted to present this clear guidance to the board before we rolled it out with our staff. I think most teachers understand this is where we're headed because we've been communicated through training, but this is very explicit now, and we will have plans in back to school to roll this out, and I think that's when it will become more uniform. Because we have very explicit guidance language now and an academic integrity policy. And it's really important to know that we listened to the teachers in developing both of these, the guidance language, and they had time to learn about AI. They've gone to conferences, we've presented to them, they've learned the opportunities and the challenges. And some teachers up to this point have done some really cool,
Are incorporating it into some of their lesson plans.
and others have not. So up to
Yeah.
this point, it's sort of been hit or miss. But the equity is important to us. And so now with the new graduation requirements of digital literacy, we'll just make sure it's embedded into that course. So it's a graduation requirement, and everybody will get it.
Very
Also.
good, thank you.
Okay. So then moving on to the academic integrity draft. It'll be up for first reading next week. We just really felt we were at the point that we needed a standalone academic integrity policy. We used ISBA language, we used several other existing policies from other districts, and just landed on something that fit our district. You can see how it's organized through responsibilities of administrators and counselors, teachers. Again, it emphasizes that teachers need to provide clear requirements and directions, including guidelines for appropriate artificial intelligence. So that's the first time artificial intelligence is mentioned, is under the teacher section. And then students, you can see like the fourth and fifth bullet of students say follow explicit guidelines provided by the teacher for AI use in all assignments, cite all sources, including generative AI properly, and it's explicitly teaching them how to cite their sources. And then parents and legal guardians, what can you do? What can they do to help support students with academic integrity? And then we clearly define cheating and plagiarism, and I think this is important for the board to understand. Cheating is a violation of policy 8501P, so it's a procedure, and that's where that lives, right? So we refer to that. Cheating is a violation of that policy, which outlines disciplinary guidelines, interventions, and consequences, and then we define it. Because it's part of a matrix. I don't know if you remember the discipline policy. It's part of a matrix. It has all sorts of discipline, and then it tells you the types of consequences along the stages, and we didn't want to rewrite that. That didn't make any sense. We just wanted to refer to it in this policy. So cheating is a violation of policy 8501P, which outlines disciplinary guidelines, interventions, and consequences. Cheating includes, but it's not limited to, and you can see that. And then plagiarism includes and is not but is not limited to. And you can see using AI-generated content without proper attribution is there. There's a section on honest and ethical use of artificial intelligence, which is really important, due process and disciplinary consequences. So it should align very nicely. We hope that was our intent with our current procedure.
Thank,
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
does anybody have any other
That's
questions?
great.
or-
Again, that'll come back to you next week, so you'll have a little more time to digest it. I know you've had this since Friday, but
Yeah,
then
this is,
you'll have some more time.
oh, yes, I'm sorry. This is the one that we talked about in the curriculum meeting, right? This whole, I loved that. So good. Yes, okay. I mean, the website and everything, I recognize. Okay, thank you. The next is a budget timeline presented by Jonathan Balls.
Good afternoon, Board. Thank you for your time this afternoon. I just wanted to start the discussions regarding the budget for next school year, the 25-26 school year. Including this meeting, there's only four meetings until the budget needs to be set. And so we wanted to start with kind of the timeline. As you can see, I think we've already gone through some of those as we reviewed and adjusted last year's budget. Started looking at, we've talked about some legislative action items, and those are becoming more and more clear. I will mention that I literally just got the email on, next week we have a budget webinar from the State Department. I have it, as it was communicated to us last week, it was on the 16th. Well, it's going to be on the 15th. So that would be same day as our board meeting, so I might be able to give you some up-to-date information, at least at the high level, and then see if we can apply that down into our district level. So you can kind of read through there. Again, our main focus is on towards the goal of our budget hearing with the board on June 17th.
Can I ask you about that budget webinar? What kind of things do they give you? Is it just information, suggestions on how to write a budget, or is it?
Nope.
based on
So
the
it'll be
legislation?
nuts and bolts on what passed the legislature.
Legislative,
Yeah,
okay.
it'll be nuts and bolts, and the end result will be the budget worksheets, where they talk about special distributions. For example, how much to budget for example, professional development or technology, or some of these special
Oh,
distributions.
the ones that are specifically allocated for specific reasons?
Correct. And then they'll also have, okay, here's what it looks like, because the legislator did pass some raises for staffing. Okay, what does that look like? And how it's applied. There's some things that they have to work through with that, and we should gain some fairly good information.
And they kind of tell you if they took it from somewhere else?
Correct.
It's
Kinda
all very clear.
It's the first good overview at the high level, and then we quickly, apply it to our district and our numbers as we try to estimate kind of what August 27th, is that the first day of school? Well, how the number of students that we have there. And so, again, overarching, I want you just to know that we'll talk about this. Obviously, we'll take any public input, on the budget. If there's any element of the budget process or any element of our budget that you'd like to know more about or that needs to discuss on the board, just let me know, email, and then I can be prepared to discuss that and so forth. Wanted to just highlight just maybe 2 or 3 things real quick and tell you more about where we're on the process. So each director and coordinator, all the supervisors have received a list of their current employees by account code. And we've moved them. And again, that's not a guarantee as well. But then we'll go through negotiations with that. And then
You say you've moved them, what do you mean by?
move them on the pay scales.
Oh, okay.
Just to, again, anticipate, okay, if they,
Yep,
you
yep.
know,
The ladder.
typically we do give movement, but again, that's still up to the board. But that's, move them on the pay scale unless they're topped out. And so they're kind of working on the expense side. Again, that salaries and benefits, as you remember, take up, is about 87% of our budget. And so that's fairly important. We will talk starting next week about the negotiation process. And so the board will be intimately involved in that, on that process, and obviously approving any negotiations that, that happen from that.
So I guess I'm not clear on the movement that you said you already moved, and I was thinking
Just
that
in
was a
spreadsheet,
part.
just in a spreadsheet.
Oh, I see.
Just for budget. Yeah,
Oh,
again, so this is, remember, so.
That's part, and that would be in preparation for
Yes.
negotiations.
Yep. Just again, we're just trying to look into the future. What does that look like without negotiations happening? And I'll talk about some more things, more information we're gathering. It's just we're trying to be, fiscally responsible, being conservative with our budgets. And so I'm trying to give, okay, here's the scope if we do, again, move them. What does that look like, for next school year? So that's on the expense side. Of course, they're looking at their supplies, their equipment, and all of those needs as well. And then with this webinar, I'll start to look at on the revenue side, right? So that's, okay, how much money are we coming in? One thing that I already know that we've talked, and they'll talk about that before, but this is the first time since I have records of going back almost 20 years that we did not receive from the legislature an increase in discretionary dollars. Discretionary dollars is, you can think of it at kind of cost of operating, cost of operation. This is the utilities. This is for the coaches. This is for everything that doesn't come through salary-based apportionment or a special distribution. For example, last year, we received, again, this is all based on units. You're going to get sick of you get sick of that word, but it drives so many things. And so we received a little over $3,900 a unit in additional dollars. So that was, that we helped pay for any increases and so forth. This year, they did not give us any of those, any increase there. And that was the first time. So that was,
But you still got it, just.
yeah, you still got it, just not, back in 08, 09, we actually got a decrease during that recession timeframe. So again, we're thankful that it stayed the same. But of course, we have increases in Idaho Power, City of Pocatello. And so we'll that'll be part of the budgeting process.
And we've had so many increases in the
Correct.
last few years.
Correct. So and that's this part of the budgeting cycle. We did, let me go on the other side. So those discretionary dollars are divided up into what I call operational, or they're unrestricted dollars. The other discretion is, they actually say that that's for health insurance. And that's a big component. That's our largest benefit. $15.5 million is what we spend on health insurance every year. And we don't know, for example, what next year's premium is. We anticipate that'll come. And that's part of my discussion to you, kind of to help you see, is that we're just gathering information to kind of set this budget, right? To give you a picture of what we anticipate our district finances will look like for next school year. But we do insure almost 1,200 employees. And so we do know from the revenue side that we will have an increase. But again, it's one of those hard things. We get reimbursed by the unit, but of course have to pay by the individual. And so that's why it's so important that we've taken steps to align our staffing levels with our unit levels. So anyway, we will look to that, but again, that's where we're in that gathering phase there. One last thing, I just want to one of the biggest things that we look at is, again, the timing. right? So this budget starts July 1st. It will be set June 17th. But really, it will be the cutoff as of the end of April, once we get everything balanced and reconciled as of April. So we still have about 16.5% of the year to kind of estimate where our ending balances will be on June 30th. And so thankfully, a lot of that is in contract, again, salaries and benefits under contracts. But then from accounting terms, we have to accrue, or we have to look at, okay, administrators, their last paycheck for this current year, school year, it comes in July. And for teachers, it's in August. And so we take those salary amounts with the accompanying benefits and accrue them or move them back into June. And so we do that every year, so it's really, we just, look at the difference there, and that's where we try to estimate what that ending balance will be. And that's one of the biggest one of the biggest activities that many are involved in with that. Try to get that, I call it again the crystal ball, to try to get more accurate into that amount. And so those are just some of the kind of the activities, kind of the challenges of this budgeting cycle. And so we will just discuss that up until our budget hearing on June 17th and get you more numbers as I receive them. Again, I don't know how much I'll have by next Tuesday, but for sure, work session in May. Plan on a good, healthy discussion on the preliminary, what we see with budgets.
So I know when we were in the discussions with Washington, that there was possibilities of needing to do some reductions. I know this is probably still too early.
No, I think we're, and I was gonna
Nutrition
grab that
and
number, 21?
Retirements that were probably,
Is it 21? 10, and I think Sue's 11.
Okay, so we just have one more elementary
Yeah.
position to fill at Washington.
still,
So I think we were able to,
I think we'll be able to balance it without having to keep, because we promised the job piece, right? And so we want to make sure that we know that they have a position that we're going to be able to equal out. There will be one that will come up before then, and so I feel pretty confident to say that we'll be able to, do that without having to have a surplus of teachers based on not enough retiring.
gotcha.
But
And that-
maybe to your question,
Yeah.
Ms. Clark, we're about 19 and a half positions that we've reduced through the course of this process.
Okay,
And
so
so we
it's not that
will
we're letting someone go, it's
No.
just, we're just not hiring,
Position,
not filling.
position.
Understood.
Yep, so
Okay.
maybe a combination of what Mrs. Minor said as well. We're carrying on the books probably, by our latest estimate,
probably 10,
anywhere
10,
from
11.
10 to 15 teachers over what we are allowed for by units.
Yep.
And so we'll.
So
be-
we still have to pay for that out of savings or our
Exactly.
discretionary funds,
And then we'll,
10 to 15?
yes. and then,
Teachers or total positions?
Positions by teachers, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm. And so over the course of the year, as we see where our numbers come in for fall, as Mr. Watson will tell us what that kindergarten group looks like, and then we know, what will be graduating. And so that will be kind of a net reduction, essentially.
And
then-
any losses
And
throughout
any
all
other
the
losses
grades?
in 1 through 12, right?
Okay.
And so, again, over the course of next year, we'll try to reduce some more, and then depending on where we come in the fall, if we need to reduce a few more beyond what we think we will. But that way, we're not eliminating or riffing people.
Sure.
Yeah. And so this is, I think, the safest way to do it.
Correct.
And the best way for our people. And we have the savings that we're able to
Yeah.
rely on for this next year.
Yep.
Or, again, depending on how many positions or how many teachers we carry into the future. But I feel confident in where we're at right now and in our recommendations to the board.
That we're closer to where our budget
Yeah,
says
and we
we
always
need to
just
be.
try to get closer and closer to what the revenues will be by way of guessing these expenditures
Yeah.
to positions. Does that make sense?
Well, when it's 87% of our budget, we
Exactly.
huge.
That's
we have
where you
to.
gotta go.
It's one of those interesting things, that we look to the future, try to project for the future, but then once July comes and once we start school, then we're behind, right? Because then we're locked into contracts, and then we have to accept, what the number of students and, what the fall brings us in everything from special needs students to, enrollment increases or decreases. And so it's a very unique, budgeting is very unique, and you all know that way. So again, if there's any elements you'd like to know, or even just, pieces of the district or benefits or anything like that, please reach out and let me know, and then we can discuss that.
Okay.
We don't have any public or written comment. So if there's nothing else, then I guess that's it. So that concludes this meeting. I hereby declare